welcome to another episode of NBA 2K19 Roster Edits with Remember the Great Sports. Today we're going to be focusing on the Phoenix Suns. The Phoenix Suns, a very storied franchise. However, they have never won an NBA championship. However, they have had many great players play for them throughout their illustrious Hall of Fame careers in many cases. So, NBA 2K19 did a relatively good job with the Suns. However, there is one glaring omission, and anybody that's an NBA 2K fan knows that Charles Barkley has not ever been on any of the NBA 2K games with the exception of the Dream Team years that they put the 92 Dream Team on there. So, with that being said, obviously, we got to add Charles Barkley to the Suns. There's also another Hall of Famer that is not on the Suns. I can't remember if he was on past teams, I can't quite recall. However, he recently passed away, so maybe that's why he dropped off the roster, but I added him back. So with that being said, I am just going to skip through these pretty quick because I'm only going to take 2 of the guys off the team out of the 15. I feel the other 13 are very solid. Most of them are Hall of Famers or are probably going to be Hall of Famers like Steve Nash here before it's all said and done. So, Steve Nash, point guard. Dennis Johnson, point guard, shooting guard. Amar'e Stoudemire, power forward, and we'll talk about that in a second. Shawn Marion, small forward, power forward. Point guard, Kevin Johnson. Shooting guard, small forward, Walter Davis. I was very happy to see him finally added to the game. I feel that he should be a Hall of Famer, and maybe he will be someday. Speaking of Hall of Famer, Paul Westphal just got inducted into the Hall of Fame this year, so congratulations to him, rightfully so. He earns a spot on this roster, regardless of his Hall of Fame status as an all-time Sun. Also, coached the Suns for a little while. During the Barkley years. Jason Kidd, point guard, not known as a Phoenix Sun, so much, but he did have some very formidable years there. Played about 4.5, 5 seasons with the team. So he makes the cut. Tom Chambers, probably one of the most well-known Suns prior to Charles Barkley getting there, along with Larry Nance, who also was a very well-known Suns player. Hall of Famer Charlie Scott made the game. Very happy to see him on the game as a point guard, shooting guard. He was, a beast out of North Carolina. Had some very good years with the Suns as well. As you can see, averaged 25 a game for a couple seasons there before going to the Boston Celtics. So 4 years with the team. Larry Nance, we talked about. Dick Van Arsdale, very good player. As you can see, almost a career with the team, 3 years with the Knicks. However, had some very good seasons at, 21 points a game, as you can see there. Thunder Dan, Alvan Adams is the backup center, and Devin Booker. So, these are all great players, but we got to make room for 2 Hall of Famers. So how do we do that? Well, I hate to say this, but because Devin Booker is so young, and has only been around for 3 years, I take him off the team. Plus, if you look at the stock roster, he is the 15th guy on the roster. He's not even in the starting lineup anyway, where Charles Barkley is in the starting lineup. So, Devin Booker's my one deletion. And with that also being said, I hate to do this because he was one of my favorite Phoenix Suns, but Thunder Dan Majerle as well also doesn't make the cut, only because, as you can see, we are very stock full of shooting guards. 1, 2, 3, 4 if you want to count Scott, 5, 6 guys, 7 if you want to count Dennis Johnson, who can also play the shooting guard position. So, there are 5 guys listed as shooting guards. 2 of them are Booker and Majerle, and 2 of the other guys are listed as point guards, and there's 4 point guards on this team. So we got to get some size on this team. There's, this team can run and gun, but you got to have Charles Barkley and this other Hall of Famer. So stay with me, and I'll show you the new additions. All right, so here are the starting lineups. I have Steve Nash at the point guard. Steve Nash gets the nod over Jason Kidd and KJ, only because he was, I believe, MVP as a Phoenix Sun. Had some very, very good seasons, and he's a very good player to get the ball to your scorers. The next guy is Walter Davis at shooting guard. Again, highly underrated player. Look at his stats. He averaged 23, 21, 20, 19, 14, 18, 21 and a half, 23, 24 points per game for the Phoenix Suns. How this guy isn't in the Hall of Fame beats me. Hopefully someday he will be, but a very good all-time Sun. He's a little oversized, so he can play a little small forward, as you can see there as well. Now, this next guy, this is the Hall of Famer I was talking about. This is Connie Hawkins. Connie Hawkins spent about 5 seasons with the Suns. He was actually an old rookie. He got into some legal issues during his college career and basically couldn't play in the NBA until he was 27 years old, is the short version of that story. And because of that, he lost some years, prime years of his career, not being able to play in the league. Nonetheless, he is a Hall of Famer. He recently passed away in the last couple years, and I think that's probably why he was not included in this year's game. However, you have to add him back to the team as your starting small forward. He was one of the best dunkers before there were dunkers. I mean, I know everybody knows who Michael Jordan is, even Dominique Wilkins and guys like that. Dr. J, this guy was doing it before Dr. J. I mean, he was a high flyer, dunker. It's just you don't see much footage of him dunking because there was no recording of NBA or ABA games. Also, there wasn't a slam dunk contest. So, this is one of the best dunkers to ever play the game that nobody knows about, Connie Hawkins. Now, of course, none other than Charles Barkley. At your starting power forward, there's not much more that needs to be said. Charles Barkley is your starting power forward, however you want to look at it, on the Phoenix Suns. One of the greatest Phoenix Suns ever to play, if not the greatest. Maybe Devin Booker will change that before it's all said and done. But Barkley is the guy that you have to add to your starting lineup. You can obviously find Charles Barkley in the player editor section. If you go online and go to the player DNA, type in Barkley, you'll find Charles Barkley matches, all over the place. And the same with Connie Hawkins. You should be able to find him as well. Somebody created Connie Hawkins. With that being said, Barkley at the power forward moves Amar'e Stoudemire to the center position. Amar'e Stoudemire, great player with the Phoenix Suns. As you can see, had some very explosive years, 20 a game, 26 a game, 20 in a game, 25 a game, 21 a game, 23 a game, until he moved to the Knicks in the 2010-2011 season. Probably when it's all said and done, Mario will be in the Hall of Fame as well. So, starting center. With that being said, your backup center is Alvan Adams. Alvan Adams was on the Phoenix Suns in the late 70s, early 80s. He was a big man that played his college ball at Oklahoma. As you can see, very formidable player. 15, 14 points a game, 8 or 9 rebounds a game. Very good defensive player. Great guy to have coming off the bench when you need some defensive presence in the paint. Tom Chambers, great Phoenix Sun player. Started his career off with the Seattle Supersonics. However, when he went to the Phoenix Suns, you can see that he scored 25, 27 a game for a couple seasons. Then he kind of dropped off a little bit, and he wound up finishing his career with a couple other teams, but he had some very solid 4 years with that. Very amicable backup power forward to have on this team. Great scorer. Backup point guard. This is one of many. Dennis Johnson. Dennis Johnson can play the 1 or 2 on this team, only because we have so many point guards on this team. There's not enough minutes for all of them. Shawn Marion. Shawn Marion was a Phoenix Sun, I believe, originally. Yep, he was drafted by the Suns out of UNLV. You can see that he had some very, very good seasons with the Suns before he moved on to a few different teams, eventually finishing up his career. Very good player. Probably on the cusp of maybe being a Hall of Famer someday. We'll see. What time will tell. But very good backup small forward. Also can play the 4 position at power forward if needed. Here's another backup point guard, KJ. Kevin Johnson. The teams with Charles Barkley. Throughout the 90s. KJ was the point guard that got the ball to whoever needed to score. Backup shooting guard. A little farther down on the list is Paul Westphal. Paul Westphal was one of the best scorers ever to play in the game, hands down. Very good shooter. Played before the three-point line really existed. Wasn't a big-time three-point, as you can see all the zeros on the three-point side there, but the guy averaged 20 a game, 21 a game, 25 a game, 24 a game, 21 a game for his years with the Suns. Then after he left the Suns, he played a couple years with the Knicks and the Seattle Supersonics, then back with the Suns where he retired, where he'd eventually become their head coach in the 90s, coaching the teams with Barkley, Kevin Johnson, Tom Chambers, etc. So, a 12th man on their roster is Charlie Scott. I put Charlie Scott ahead of Jason Kidd as the backup point guard, simply because I feel that his offensive skills are way superior to Jason Kidd's. Jason Kidd, a good player, gets the ball to who he needs to get the ball to, but when you have Steve Nash on the team like that and Kevin Johnson, you're kind of dropping off on your offensive abilities. And I feel that Charlie Scott, as you can see, averaged 25, 25, 24 a game for those years with the Suns there, that he's a good formidable point guard, shooting guard combo that can play either the 1 or 2 position. So he gets the nod over Kidd. Finally, Larry Nance, another good high flyer, kind of like Connie Hawkins, underrated player, played half of his career with the Suns and about half of his career with the Cleveland Cavs. He can play the small forward position or the power forward position. This team really lacks size, so that's why I give him the nod over Van Arsdale, only because you don't need another guard when you have so many guards already on the bench. So Nance, standing at 6'10", most likely would be more useful to be used in the power forward capacity than he would be the small forward capacity on this team. So your backup, Dick Van Arsdale, again, very formidable player. Spent a long time, most if not all of his career, with the Suns. However, he doesn't make the starting 13. And Jason Kidd as well. Jason Kidd, I know he's a Hall of Famer. I know some people may not like this over Charlie Scott, but I feel you can go either with Charlie Scott or Jason Kidd, and I spoke my reasons for Charlie Scott only because I feel he's a better offensive player than Kidd is. So, of course, this team, I mentioned Paul Westphal coached, but many of you may not realize that John MacLeod is the all-time winningest coach in Phoenix Suns history. He never won championships, NBA championships, I should say, but he was a long-time coach of this team and has the most wins of any other coach in Phoenix Suns history. So, again, not a great picture. I tried my best to, make him look the best that I could, but honestly, this doesn't give him justice of how he really looks. So, his backup, I actually put Mike D'Antoni down as the assistant coach. I was going back and forth whether I wanted to put him on the Rockets roster or this roster, and I chose to put him on the Suns roster because he was their coach, during those Steve Nash, Shawn Marion, Amar'e Stoudemire years when the teams were very, very good. They just couldn't get over that hump of winning the NBA championship. So, good assistant coach. However, John MacLeod gets the nod as the head coach. Very good to have both of those guys on the sidelines. So with that being said, I hope you agree with my Phoenix Suns choices. Stay tuned for the next episode, as it's kind of going to be a surprise. It's going to be kind of a two-part episode, as I actually share a team with you that's not on the game. So it's actually a created team. So stay tuned, and I'll see you for the next episode. Thanks.